Seven friends, young and carefree, embarked on a weekend getaway. They craved adventure, a break from the mundane. The plan was simple: a secluded cabin in the woods, laughter, and shared stories under the stars. They packed their bags, anticipation bubbling in their chests. The drive was long, the sun sinking lower with each passing mile. Jokes and laughter filled the car, their excitement palpable. They were escaping the city, its noise and demands. The woods beckoned, promising a haven from the ordinary. Little did they know, the woods held secrets best left undisturbed. As dusk settled, they finally arrived at their destination. The cabin, nestled deep within the woods, stood in eerie silence. Its wooden walls were weathered, whispering tales of time and neglect. A shiver ran down Alex's spine, a sense of foreboding settling in his gut. The friends piled out of the car, their earlier exuberance giving way to a hesitant curiosity. The cabin's interior was dusty and dimly lit, the air thick with the scent of decay. Cobwebs clung to the corners, and the furniture was draped in white sheets, giving the space a spectral feel. Despite the unsettling atmosphere, the friends set about making the cabin their own. They lit a fire in the old stone fireplace, its crackling flames casting dancing shadows on the walls. As darkness fell completely, enveloping the cabin in an inky blackness, they unpacked their bags and settled in. Stories and laughter filled the room, pushing back against the unsettling stillness of the woods. They shared drinks, played cards, and reveled in each other's company, momentarily forgetting the strangeness of their surroundings. The wind howled outside, a mournful sound that seemed to press against the walls. The fire crackled, sending sparks spiraling up the chimney, each pop and hiss echoing in the sudden silences between their conversations. A sense of unease lingered at the edges of their merriment, a subtle reminder that they were not alone. Later, as they gathered closer to the warmth of the fire, someone brought up the legend of the Midnight Game. It was a childish dare, a ritual rumored to summon dark forces. The Midnight Game, a game whispered in hushed tones, a portal to the unknown. A test of courage, some said, a dance with darkness, others warned. It promised a glimpse beyond the veil, a taste of the supernatural. The friends, their initial skepticism giving way to morbid curiosity, gathered around the flickering light of a kerosene lamp. The cabin's isolation became more pronounced, the silence outside pressing against the wooden walls like an unseen entity. The game, they read, was simple in its instructions, terrifying in its implications. A ritualistic invitation, a summoning. One had to stand alone in a darkened room, calling out to the darkness, inviting it in. A door left ajar, a candle as the only source of light, and a name whispered into the void. The rules were clear, the consequences dire. Despite the growing unease, the group decided to tempt fate. They were, after all, beyond such childish fears, or so they told themselves. The bravado, however, felt paper thin, their laughter tinged with nervous tension. As the hour of midnight approached, the weight of their decision settled upon them. The ritual was simple, precise. A single candle flickered in the center of the room, casting long dancing shadows on the walls. The air, thick with anticipation and a growing sense of dread, seemed to crackle with unseen energy. The friends gathered around the wooden door, their faces illuminated by the flickering candlelight, their expressions a mixture of apprehension and nervous excitement. Sarah, the bravest of the group, volunteered to go first. She stepped into the darkened room, her silhouette disappearing into the shadows. The door clicked shut behind her, the sound unnaturally loud in the sudden silence. The remaining six stood outside, their breathing shallow, their hearts pounding in their chests. The game had begun. Minutes stretched into an eternity. The silence inside the room pressed outward, punctuated only by the soft thudding of their own pulses. They listened intently for any sound, any indication of what was happening on the other side of the door. Then, a sound. A soft scratching emanated from within the room, like claws dragging across wood. The scratching grew more insistent, accompanied by a low, guttural growl that seemed to vibrate through the floorboards. Fear, cold and sharp, pierced through the group's bravado. The shadows in the room seemed to writhe and twist, taking on menacing forms in the flickering candlelight. The air grew thick with a palpable sense of dread, each breath catching in their throats. Then, silence. The scratching stopped abruptly, leaving an unnerving quiet in its wake. The friends held their breath, their eyes fixed on the door. Long seconds ticked by, each one an agonizing eternity. Just when their nerves were stretched to the breaking point, they heard Sarah's voice, a hushed whisper from beyond the wood. "Let me out," she pleaded, her voice trembling. Relief washed over the group, momentarily eclipsing their fear. They rushed to the door, fumbling with the latch in their haste. When the door swung open, revealing the room within, their relief turned to ice-cold terror. The room was empty. The single candle still flickered on the floor, casting long shadows that danced and swayed in the stillness. But Sarah was gone. Panic surged through the group. Sarah was gone, vanished into thin air. The room, moments ago filled with her presence, now felt cold and empty, the air thick with an unseen menace. They called out her name, their voices echoing in the silence, but there was no answer. The game, a playful dare only moments ago, had morphed into a nightmare. They searched the cabin frantically, their fear growing with each passing moment. They checked every room, every nook and cranny, their hearts pounding in their chests. The silence was deafening, broken only by their own frantic whispers and the creaking of the old house. But there was no sign of Sarah, no indication of where she might have gone. As the night wore on, their hope dwindled. They huddled together in the main room, their faces pale and drawn in the flickering candlelight. The weight of Sarah's disappearance pressed down on them, a suffocating blanket of fear. The hours crawled by, each one an agonizing eternity. Sleep was impossible, their minds haunted by Sarah's disappearance and the ever-present fear that something was watching them, toying with them. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of leaves outside the windows sent shivers down their spines. They were prisoners in their own private hell. Then, as the first rays of dawn began to filter through the cracks in the boarded-up windows, they saw it. A figure standing at the edge of the woods, its silhouette barely visible in the early morning light. It was Sarah. Relief flooded through them, washing away the fear that had held them captive for what felt like an eternity. They rushed outside, calling out her name, their voices hoarse with relief and exhaustion. But as they drew closer, their hope turned to ashes in their mouths. The figure turned, and they saw its face, or rather, what was left of it. It was Sarah, but not as they remembered her. Her features were twisted into a grotesque mockery of a smile, her eyes glowing with an unnatural light. Terror, raw and primal, surged through them. The creature lurched toward them, its movements grotesque, a horrifying parody of human grace. Fear lent them speed, and they scrambled back inside the cabin, slamming the heavy wooden door shut against the nightmare that pursued them. The sound of their pursuer slamming against the wood, the enraged growls and inhuman snarls, only amplified their terror. They barricaded the door with furniture, their hands trembling as they worked. The flimsy barrier felt woefully inadequate against the raw, primal power that raged just beyond it. They huddled together in the center of the room, their eyes wide with terror, their breaths coming in short, panicked gasps. The entity, fueled by a dark hunger, slammed against the barricade, the sound reverberating through the cabin. Each impact sent tremors through the floor, each splintering crack a harbinger of their impending doom. They were out of time, out of options, their last vestiges of hope fading with each passing moment. Then, silence. An eerie, unsettling silence descended upon the cabin. The friends huddled together, listened intently, their bodies taut with anticipation. The door creaked open. Standing in the threshold, bathed in the pale light of dawn, was Alex. His eyes burned with an unsettling intensity, a chilling mockery of his former warmth. The others stared in horror, their blood turning to ice in their veins. The game, they realized with dawning horror, had claimed another victim. Alex was gone, replaced by something monstrous, something ancient and evil. He was now a part of the game, a pawn in its endless cycle of terror. The realization hit them like a physical blow, stealing their breath, their hope, their very will to resist. They were trapped in a nightmare with no escape. And so, the cycle continued. The cabin in the woods stood silent, a lonely sentinel in the vast expanse of wilderness. But its silence was deceptive, for within its decaying walls, a new game was about to begin.